course. Oh my god. Okay, plug it back in.
Okay, so today we're reviewing for the midterm next lecture on Wednesday. I've been sending out some announcements. Hopefully you've been reading those announcements. But just in case, I wanted to point out that I posted an amount of review materials. There's a study guide. The study guide has sort of the usual sort of list of topics. Don't really help you very much. But then towards the bottom, there's some questions you can try out. And my suggestion again is that you print that out and actually pretend you're taking a test of some kind and see how you do with that sort of environment, because taking something on paper is very different from typing stuff on Eclipse. And to be honest, some of these questions are a little different than we've been thinking about some of these things, so it's probably good for you to see the form some of these questions might take. So there's those materials. There's also, you should look at this test reference page. Again, this will be printed as part of your test, probably on the back page. You can pull it off kind of thing and use it. And it tells you everything you need to know about Java. Not everything, but a lot of syntax, right? So if you're looking at some questions that want you to write something, you can refer to that. Maybe it'll help spark some memory. I tell you how to do certain very basic operations. You should make sure you understand what's on that reference sheet. And also, if something's on that sheet that doesn't make sense to you, you're in trouble. You got to make sure that you understand. This is like the baseline, right? So if there's something here that's not making sense, you got to figure it out. Talk to us, type in this code, debug it, make sure this is like rock solid, because otherwise you're building on this, not just spitting this back, right? These are basic tools. So anyway, this will be available to you. That's the only notes that you should have during the test, right? Nothing that you're bringing in yourself. And then there's also a review quiz. This counts for participation points. I kept adding more and more questions to it, so there's maybe like 18 questions now, so I don't know, I have to look. There's your basic sort of Canvas quiz, mostly multiple choice kind of things. I think there's one question you have to actually type in an answer and hope that you type it in exactly the form that I'm looking for. You can take it as many times as you want. You can take it while working with a friend and doing it. You can, however you want to get through this material, you're allowed to do it. Whatever resources you want to use, okay? So if you're stuck on something, talk to us, talk to a study partner. I think it's good to work through it with someone else and bounce ideas off each other kind of thing. But anyway, work on that. And a lot of those are, again, evaluate this. What does this do kind of questions. Yeah.
So if it's based on participation, our actual score won't matter, just either we did it.
It turns into something eventually that's a small part of the grade. Along with those are the mysterious things that have not yet been graded, like the Runestone things and the Kahoot quizzes and things like that. So eventually, those all get lumped together into some sort of easy peasy participation kind of thing.
But our actual score won't really.
Well, I'm not saying that. So most, like the Runestone, I'm looking at there's some minor threshold you have to pass to get full credit for something. It's similar to this. If you answer one question out of 18, that doesn't count as full credit, right? But it won't be 100%. Tomorrow's lab will be a series of questions that you'll write down the answer on the worksheet and then discuss. Those are probably on the sort of harder side like the test would be, because they're more full-fledged writing out answer kinds of things. The test we'll have some elements of that, but not the full thing like that. And then the other thing is that the rest of today and tomorrow I'm having, besides normal help hours, there's some special designated hours where the idea is that if you're hoping to meet with a small group and talk to a TA as opposed to one-on-one, they'll be hanging out by the whiteboard by the laptop area in the back of the CADE lab. So look for them there. The queue should also be active if you're looking for something more individual. But for example, if you've started looking at the study guide questions and you're stuck on something, it's a good place to get clarification on that kind of topic. It'd be nice if you came with some questions of your own. I think the TAs can sort of generate some stuff on the fly, but it's hard to generate like just a million random questions to completely fill all this time. So do prepare a little bit to come to these kind of things. Okay, so Lots of review stuff to do. The only thing that's really due that you're forced to do, well, two things, the lab and the online participation quiz. Okay, so work on those. Questions? Okay, so today, as a review, we're going to do a big Kahoot quiz. Those of you who had me before in some other class, like 10:30, I like to play you against me. So what that means is, for the Kahoot, if, I don't know, I think I made this one a little easy this time, so I'm a little nervous. If 75% of you get the right answer, you get a point. Otherwise, I get a point. All right? So, and there's only bragging rights involved here. Or if you get them all right, then I make the test harder as well. So, anyway, if you need a device, come up and get a tablet. So that's the main activity here today. All right, we better get started, I think. I have a lot of questions. So, use your UIDs again to log in, okay? Da, da, da. There's the pin. Let's see, where should I keep our little score? I'll just... All those capital U's. Good thing my script can handle that. Oh. Lowercase u, lowercase u. I just had trouble in my other class, this Python class I'm doing, and students had to submit an image labeled as like smiling or surprised and neutral. We might do a similar project actually in this class, but there were so many people, you 1, 2, 3, who are you? There were so many people that spelled surprised as surprised, and I wasn't expecting that to be there and creating my code. But, all right, still slowly logging in. We need to know the number so I know what 75% is, right? All right, so I should make it 66%, so it's 100. But here, 75% of 155. 132. 100. Okay, someone raise your hand and tell me what 75% of 156 is. Okay. What's that? 118. 118, all right. So if 118 of you get it right, then you get a point. $159, where'd that come from? I'm adding one to this. All right, so this is an expression that evaluates to a value. An expression that's all ints, stays in int land, and stays in int. So 3 divided by 3 is still 3, not 3.0 or something else. Okay? So always think of expressions as things that turn into values. That's the important lesson here. And good job. You got a point. You got to stay on top of me for that part. I tend to... Look at that. What value does the bottom expression evaluate to? I hope this is a harder one. Okay, so this literal string makes a string object. We can call a method on that string object. You say, give me the character at index 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. It gives you the E character back, right? Most of you did very well there as well. All right, 2 points. I hope I hit you with a hard one now. I think I do. Prepare yourself. Oh no, this is going to be easy. So calm your minds, work through the parts. Remember on the test, you see these big globs of things, and you got to force yourself to kind of just like work through it bit by bit. Stay calm. Is 5 not equal to 4? That is true, right? Now that's part of an AND statement. If that were false, right away you could say the whole thing was false, right? But because that side is true, we need to evaluate the right-hand side of that expression. Is 2 less than 1? It's false. Uh-oh, trouble, but this is an OR here. So either one of these is true, then we're okay here. Is -1 less than 2? It's true. This is true. True, so true or false is true. True and true is true. Okay? So just work through each piece. If this were a paper test, I would write above it. This is true. This is false. This is true. And then figure out how that all fits together. Notice these parentheses here also force that to happen there. Yeah?
If we didn't have those parentheses, we would evaluate the first and as singular.
So without this parentheses, and has precedence over or, I think. So it would do these two, and then or with this, which would be or true. So it's sort of true. So this would be true and false, which is false, or true, which is true. Either way it works.
So it would have been either way.
Yeah. All right. Got the point. Yeah. All right. So again, the skill here is the learning to just sort of work through it bit by bit. And of course, knowing what and or does. But I think the harder part also is fooling yourself. 5 not equal to 4. It's like, I don't know, your brain just kind of doesn't like that, right? Just say it to yourself over and over again. Tight race still. Which line would cause a compiler error? So a bunch of lines there. Maybe I'll dim the lights for a moment here. Back row. I think you got this one down. This is a no-win situation for me. Seconds! Push a button, quick! Panic! Do something foolish! All right, good job. You got a point. I needed that one, I think. All right, so here, Declaring the method seems fine. Curly brace. Declaring a variable. If statement. Return equals to. A lot of people I've seen in homework, people want to assign a value to this magic return thing. But return is a statement that says whatever value is listed after the return is what the method evaluates to. So you don't put an equal sign in there, right? That's the main thing. And it's easy to miss, and it's easy to kind of put in there, but that's not the way we do it. Okay? Holding strong up top. Oh no, they're creeping closer. All right, here we go. How many iterations would this loop do? So again, this is pretty basic thing. Kind of question to see if you understand for loops. For loop all looks pretty standard till you get to the end. And, ooh, hold it in there. All right, let's take a quick. So for loops, to be honest, I think a for loop you should use primarily as a very standard form, counting some set number of times where it's very clear how many times what that number is. Count from 0 to 9, count from 10 to 100, that kind of thing. But they are very general, right? Like you can put your increment part to be some weird math statement. You can do a method call in here, anything you want, right? So how does this work? I equals 1. I is less than 10. So we iterate. Again, iteration is the part, how many times you execute the body of the loop, right? And then I equals 2 times I. So 2 times 1 is 2. 2 is less than 10. We iterate. We double it again. 4. We iterate. We double again to 8. We iterate. We double again to 16. 16 is not less than 10, so we stop. We iterated 4 times. Okay? So again, get used to, on a paper test especially, you can't just run the code, right, and have it tell you the answer. You have to go to work through what's going on by hand like this, and again, some kind of structured way of deciding what's going on, writing down variables as they evolve, and so on is the right way to do that. All right. Any questions on that, though? Or pretty good? Let's practice that. Sorry, I'm trying to get my phone turned off here. Pushing buttons randomly. Down, 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 down. I gave you the one, right? Yeah. Oh, a new leader. The mysterious 563. What kind of loop pattern could you solve this problem? We talked about a number of loop patterns. All right, so in this case, we are looking for something. We're searching for it, right? Now, some of you might have said optimization because I said that looking for the first word that begins with a B. That's just where it lies in the file. It's not an optimization is usually give me the the best example of some number or the where the data itself is you're optimizing, not where you found it kind of thing. So again, maybe you could kind of complain a little bit about that, but it really is a search, right? I'm just looking for a word that starts with B. That's a search. All right, I better start getting tough. Maybe I do here. Let's see. Oh. What will be output by the following code? I hope it's long. It is. Yay! 60 seconds! I know the back row is like, I can't see any of this. Only 12 answers so far, halfway through the time period. I'm just going to say numbers out loud to confuse you. 5, 9. Answer quick! Oh! All right. Now the back row can see it. Okay, so we have n equals 1. K equals n plus 1, which is 2. If k is less than 2, is 2 less than 2? Nope. Or n equals 2. Nope. Do this complicated thing that we get to skip, so we skip that, right? So that's not true. We do the else. If n plus k is less than 4, n plus k is 3. Is that less than 4? Yep. N equals negative k. K is 2, negative k is negative 2. Skip the else. Print out those two added together. Add those together, 0. Okay? Again, nothing tricky in any part of this particularly, but there's enough little pieces that you have to be under complete control that, you know, the probability adds up, you make some kind of mistake, right? So work on being accurate in your conditional evaluation and little tiny math things, right? All right. So the tough thing with those kind of questions is sometimes they take a lot of work, and then there's only one right answer, right? So it's not like a partial credit kind of thing. You got to make sure you can do those things pretty accurately. Oh, more code to look at. Using methods. Seconds. We need another 100 people to answer. Oh! All right. What happened here? Let's look. Hey, hold on. We have num equals to 1, right? Then we call the f method with num. We enter a new scope, and so there is a new num variable called 1 in that scope, right? Parameters have their own existence. We do some math on this. Num equals, let's see, 4 times num, so 4 divided by 3, integer, which is 1 plus 2. This turns to 3. We leave scope. That goes away. We return to the main scope. The num in main is still 1. So we print it out. Right? When you pass a primitive to a method, it's not the same object. We pass the value stored in here, 1, to that new variable num, which is in a different stack frame, a different scope, right? If I had said down here, well, I didn't return anything here, first of all, right? If I had returned num and said num equals f of num, then I would have a different answer. But nothing escapes this method here. right? This num is its own entity, different from this num. And anything we do to it up here goes away as soon as we leave scope. So, questions on that? That is a subtlety that is super important for making your code work correctly. All right? Question? Hold on, I can't hear. So yeah. What if I printed out this whole expression here, like down here? This is a void, so it doesn't return anything. And so it print out, what happens if you print out a void something? It's just null or?
Errors.
I think it's an error, yeah. I have to think about I can't remember what that is. I'm sort of stuck on what Python does in that case. But, so there's no value coming out of here, right? We're not, if I had returned an int here and returned this value here, then it would print out 3 or whatever it was from that, right? So you can get a value out of a method by returning that value or by passing in an object and changing that object. So there are 2 different ways. So that was a trick question. But it's not a trick question because it's what Java does, right? It's like a real question. Still made me happy. All right? So be cautious of that. That sort of shows. Okay, question?
Yeah. Even though it was a void, it didn't return anything. Like, but it was integer. We were like doing math with integers, right?
Up here.
And yeah, and it was going to be like 1 times 4, 4 over 3.
This part would evaluate to 1. 4 divided by 3 rounds down to, or truncates to 1, right?
Okay, it evaluates to 1.
And then plus 1 would be 3. So up here, num is equal to 3.
Okay, that.
Yeah. Which many of you liked as an answer. Okay. We're done. Very good. Choose the correct way to find the average value when count and total are int variables. So if I have count and total both as int variables, so I have some sum like by the oh, wait a minute, I might screw this one up. I changed this at the last minute last night, and I think I made a mistake here. Yeah, I messed this one up. I'll give you credit. Okay, so the problem was, whoa, what did I just do? Okay, go away. I wanted the average, which is the total value divided by the count, right? And when I was going back over one more time, I was like, there's 2 right answers, and so I changed this one to be wrong. But this was really the right answer before I made it wrong, because this one has the count up top and the total on the bottom, right? So, and I didn't notice that again. So I thought that was the right answer. This one before was like grabbing stuff as doubles each. I didn't have that int casting in there, so that would have been the right answer without that int thing. But I thought there were somehow 2 right answers, and I freaked out about it, and I fooled myself basically. So yeah. So this would be correct, except for the count and total are in the wrong places, right? It's okay to cast an int to a double, and then any math based on that becomes a double as well, and it works out fine. In this case, count divided by total are both ints. This would give you a truncated int answer, and then it would assign that correctly to a double, but you'd already have lost whatever fractional. Turn it into a double by multiplying by 1, but you've already lost the information at that point. And so that was too late. The correct way to do it again is you basically cast it as part of the expression to make sure the whole expression is a double, and you get out 3.56 or something like that in there. Or if you put them both into doubles and don't cast it, then it's okay. So just kind of,
Can you just go over what that was, what that did say when it was right for the...
I didn't have I got rid of the int here.
Okay.
In which case, the total becomes a double, the count becomes, the total was a double. That's still upside down. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Moving on. Sorry for whoever's clamoring to stay. Lost their position. Yeah. Or sort of. Yeah. Okay. Hopefully this is a normal one. Okay, it's pretty normal. What would be output by this? It's hard to lord it over you when I screw up a question so badly like that. Now I just have to sit here all defeated. Fine, get another right answer. All right, so recall we can initialize an array. So this is an int array type, and we're filling it with values 1, 3, 5, 7, index 0, 1, 2, 3. So if I ask for vowels at location 3, it gives me the 7, right? Very straightforward. But you should have a good knowledge of using index values in an array, making sure you're getting the correct thing out. And of course, starting with 0, count with 0. The first element is index 0, is like the most important thing in there, so you don't get off by 1 somewhere. Let's say I want to call absolute value method. It's in a math class. All right, typically to access static methods in other classes, you have to give the class name and then the method name, and probably have to import somewhere in there as well. But you get another point. My chances of coming back are now limited. I must crush you consistently. When does the print line execute? Like under what conditions does it execute? right, many of you. We're blurring together. So again, the model for a try-catch is you try the statements in the try block. If you throw an exception that's caught down here, it jumps over the remaining statements, goes down here, executes what's ever here. If this had been something else besides an exit, like a print line, it would execute that and then continue on below it, not bounce back up, right? That's the key thing to remember. It doesn't like jump down here and then jump back up here and continue on. It does as many as it can here. As soon as an exception is thrown, it jumps out of there to the catch, does whatever's in here, and then continues on if there's still stuff to do. So once you got that right. So when book.text is found, the print line happens as well because there's no exception thrown. What's the proper declare an array of 10 characters? These are all too easy. What am I doing? What am I doing in my life? I need to... Yeah, Kahoot does give you some bonus points for beating everybody else. Which is not really what I want to, I don't want to emphasize you guys like, just punch it in numbers.
For number of points works.
Yeah. I don't exactly know. Killing it. All right, so to make an array, you have to say it's an array type, and then you have to somehow either give a new and say how big it is, or if I had done the correct number of characters, which this is also 9 characters, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If that had been up through J, I could have assigned this initializing thing to char array chars, right? This one, you don't put the number early on. And this one, internally, really, a string is sort of an array of characters, but it's not an array we can access directly as an array, so it's not really an array of characters, right? It uses one side. Someone had a question, I thought, or, yeah?
Yeah, is the green one correct if you put the box after char?
If I put the open close square bracket here and had a J here, because otherwise it would make an array of 9 characters.
That is a shorthand way of
Yeah.
doing it, right?
Yeah. So this one would fill it with the default value, which is the character. Like a 0 character. It's not 0. It's like whatever that corresponds to, which I don't remember what it is. It's like a null character basically. Like it doesn't print anything, so you can't see it if you print it out. All right. All right. What's the correct return type? So. Oh, so you have to know from the description here. It doesn't really exactly tell you. You have to kind of think about what you normally would do in this situation. Like it doesn't say return. I don't have a return tag on this, right? So there's sort of the right.
There's a right way, but
you can sort of like that. You can sort of argue another way. Yeah. about this for a second. When you pass an array, so I call some, I have vals equals 1, 2. There's two parts to this, right? We have a heap object holding the 1, 2, and then we have vals variable referencing that object. When I pass it into by call, then double elements with vals. This value, which is this. The method is supposed to double all the values of the array and store them back in the array. So we can do some work. Index 0 equals times 2, index 1 times 2, whatever. These change. And typically, when we have a method that is not creating a new array, but changing the array, we don't return anything, because when we leave this method, that goes away, but vals is pointing to this object that has had internal values changed. Okay? If it said, create a new array with each element twice that of the input array, then I would return an int array for that. All right? So if you're creating something new, you return it. If you're just changing the values inside the array that was the parameter, then it's a side effect function. You don't return a value. All right? Now again, you could argue I should return the int array anyway, because you can make it work that way, kind of. But this is the way we sort of said we want them to happen. If you're creating something new, you return it. If you're just changing something internally, you make it void. And that way, the person knows kind of like what's happening, that the parameter itself is probably being changed. Not exactly a trick question, but I understand there's some room there to kind of fuss about which one you want. What would the following code output? Tiny, tiny. You didn't bring your opera book? So now we're making we moved away from the static methods, right? We're making objects here. I'll give you a minute and a half on this one because there's so many little things to look at. I was also mucking around with this question, so I hope. What if I pushed the right? Okay. Hey, I got a point though. Okay, so what's going on here? We are making this class is not a collection of static methods. Now this has instance variables, right? So every exam object holds a value, a val, and the constructor takes in a value and assigns that value to val. And here I am making a new exam object. So I make an exam object with its val assigned to 1, and I reference that with t. And then I make another exam object with its val 2, and I reference that from u. Then I say, hey, u val equals 3. And again, that's independent storage of the other exam object. And then I print out t and its value, 1, and u and its value, 3. So u1, u3. All right? Main thing, remember, that's independent of that one. So it's not like 3, 3 or something like that, right? So questions on that? Yeah.
So with u dot val, it's changing what u is referencing instead of changing what
U is still referencing the same object, but it's changing the internal instance variable that U is referencing. And changing it from 2 to 3. So remember, this val is inside of this object, and this val is inside this object here. Okay. All right, one last time for one last question. Following code output. Kicking you there by reversing val and underscore val or something like that. I should do that. All right, let's just talk about this real quick before we go. So, I make an object with a value 1, and t references it. The next statement says, hey, you should reference the same object that t does. And then I say u val equals 3. Well, use val equals 3. That's the same object t references. So t3, u3. There's only one object there, and it holds a value 3 inside it. That's a very important point, right? Assigning, when you do assignment like this, that's assigning references, not making a new object out of that. So, hey, see you on Wednesday. Good work, though.